What's up, everybody? Welcome back. MMA DFS picks for DraftKings, UFC Columbus, Curtis Blaydes, Chris Daukaus. The card best bets, tips, predictions, picks, lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings. We are here for you. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jake the Snake, owner of MMADFS.com. Jake, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot, man. I kind of like this slate.
Yeah, you and I were talking before it started, and we're on opposite sides here. But as we all know, the more you build and the more bets you make, the more you will like a slate. It's directly correlated. So I'm sure as I continue to build more through the night and tomorrow, that I'll feel the same as you. So what we do in these videos, we talk about the main event, what it means for DFS and betting, any newcomers making their debut, what their prospects are, and how likely they are to score well in DFS. Some fights we want to target for DFS tournaments, and then we'll close it out with some favorite bets and a stream parlay. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Get notified when we go live. Upload any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. We always appreciate that. Any questions, you can always comment on the video below, but the best way to ask us and chat with us about MMA DFS is to join our Discord. Click the join button below this video, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Ask us questions leading up to the slate and tilt and sweat the fights with us. So, Jake, I have the DraftKings screen here up. I have Curtis Blaydes, Chris Daukaus inserted. I have Bruno Souza, who is a DraftKings low-risk play in the daily plug. But we're here to talk about the main event, Blaydes versus Daukaus. Give me the breakdown on what we expect to happen and what it means for DFS.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got Curtis Blaydes, who he's been kind of up and down lately. You know, he had the Volkov fight where he set the all-time heavyweight record for the most takedowns landed at 14. Put up a massive 173 points on DraftKings. Then he goes into the Derek Lewis fight, gets absolutely starched in the second round.
Great slate, by the way.
First time he's ever been knocked out cold.
Love that slate.
Yeah, I'm sure you like that one. Yeah, profitable slate for you. But completely knocked out cold, which is crazy that that's the first time it's ever happened because he's fought Francis Ngannou twice. But Derek Lewis is the only person to ever take away Curtis Blaydes' consciousness. And then he comes back from that, you know. I mean, you kind of figure he's going to be a little more cautious after that, after his first time ever getting knocked out. Goes against Rosenstrike. Tough guy to score well against, tough guy to take down. Only scores 85 points, but kind of gets back in the horse. And now he gets a more favorable matchup, you know? Like, you don't want to be Curtis Blaydes taking on Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, Rosenstrike. Like, those are the worst guys to fight if you're Curtis Blaydes. Now he gets a smaller heavyweight, in Daukaus. And we haven't seen Daukaus get taken down in the UFC yet, but he's also only had to defend 2 takedowns. One of those was from Derek Lewis. That was sort of a weird shot. It was like in the middle of Derek Lewis knocking him out. He was like, maybe I'll take him down. He's like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm going to knock him out instead. And the other was against Alexei Oleinik, which, just desperation, grappler. So we really don't know what Daukaus' takedown defense is like. Allegedly, he's a black belt. He's kind of at a smaller gym, so you never know how legit that is. But, his brother's obviously a good grappler, so I'm sure he has somewhat okay grappling. But we'll see. We've yet to see him have to fight off his back, but, I mean, he'll almost certainly have to do that here unless he lands an immediate knockout, which, though, like we said, the only 2 people that have ever finished Blaydes, are going to be Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. Complete monsters, not, the same build as Daukaus. So I think it's going to be a tough spot for Daukaus here. Blaydes weighed in at 259 pounds. Daukaus came in a little bit heavier, but he was still like 243, I want to say. I think he had been at like 235 when he fought Lewis. So he put on a little bit of weight. I assume people do that when they fight Blaydes. I assume he's just trying to, bulk up a little bit to try to defend takedowns. Still a big size difference. 259 versus 243. Blaydes is taller. He has a longer reach. I think he's going to be able to get his hands on Daukaus here. And generally, he scores well, whether, he's got the massive 173.5 round decision over Volkov. He's got a bunch of knockouts in the second and third rounds. He does have a couple that, they kind of underwhelmed a little bit. He had the Junior Dos Santos fight where it stayed entirely on the feet and he scored like 82 points or something. That's not what we're expecting here. So in all of his fights where he's landed takedowns and gotten a finish or gone 5 rounds, he scored at least 99. So, I mean, there's still ways that he gets outscored. But in general, he's putting up massive scores when he wins because he's landing a ton of takedowns, ton of ground strikes, and then getting a finish in the second or third round. So kind of what we're expecting there. But if it doesn't pan out that way, if Daukaus does land something clean, Daukaus is super cheap. So, I mean, if Daukaus wins, I mean, it's almost a guarantee that he's going to end up in the optimal lineup at his cheap price tag. But the odds are giving him about a 22% chance to win. He projects to be about 30% owned. So, I mean, he's going to be over-owned relative to his chances of winning, at least according to the odds. So not a great spot for Daukaus. His price tag will definitely draw people in. He's always a popular play. So when people see him at his really cheap price tag, I mean, obviously people are going to feel compelled to play him on the chance that he lands a knockout, but really tough spot for Daukaus. But in high-risk contests, I think you probably want one of these guys in a lot of your contests. But like we said, there are ways that Curtis can get outscored. So you don't necessarily have to have one in every lineup. But good chance the winner ends up in the optimal lineup on both DraftKings and FanDuel. For low risk on DraftKings, I still think you stack this. It's kind of similar to last week with Aspinall and Volkov, where the loser is very likely not going to score very well at all, but the winner is going to put up a huge score. It's probably going to be Blaydes, but in the off chance that Daukaus does get a finish, if you play cash without him, that's going to be a problem. So I think it still makes sense to stack, but it's not your ideal low-risk week where the loser is still going to contribute and the winner is going to, put up a completely massive score. So, I mean, that's kind of my take on things. What are you doing with it?
Well, excuse me. My light fell off, so we're going to go without the light. That's what that big crash was. So, for me, yeah, I agree. So, it's really tough for this fight to get left off. But when we consider, if we sort by DraftKings salary, there are a ton of big favorites, a ton of high finish potential favorites, high volume favorites. So if Blaydes gets an early round 2, round 3 finish, I could see how he gets left out. Or if we see the same thing with Lewis Daukaus, where Lewis knocked out Blaydes early round 2 randomly, and Daukaus somehow does that here and scores 80-something points, maybe that is what happens. So it depends on what the dogs do. So I agree. I still think most of your lineups are high risk, and then, yes, because of the price difference on DraftKings especially, you want to stack this in low risk, so it makes a ton of sense. Now, we do have 2 fighters making their debut. Unfortunately, not a ton. Debut fighters are terrible from a content perspective, but they're great from an edge perspective. They're actually fighting each other in this fight, Jay. We have Khizriev and we have Talulin. So talk to me about these guys. Khizriev is a massive minus 1,000 favorite, which seems insane for 2 guys making their debut. But talk to me about their backgrounds and what we can expect from this fight.
Yeah, man, it is pretty crazy that, we got kids coming in as he opened the week as a negative 350 favorite, gets bet up to a negative 1,000 favorite, which is just crazy for a guy making his UFC debut, only his second fight up at 185 pounds. His whole career pretty much was at 170. He even had a fight at 155. He hasn't fought in like 18 months since the Contender Series. That was a 52nd fight. That's his only fight since 2018. Which is, I mean, just crazy. He's 5'9", going against a 6'1" Dennis. I'm just gonna go with that for the name there. I mean, there's so many red flags, but at the same time, I mean, his style of grappling where he just gets people down immediately, and then, I mean, I think he has 6 finishes in under 60 seconds. He's 13-0. He's got 9 of those wins came early, 8 in the first round, 6 in under 60 seconds. So like, his style of fighting is the perfect way to beat a guy like Dennis, where he's a round 1 KO or bust basically play. I mean, round 1 or round 2. No grappling, like helpless on the mat. I mean, once he gets taken down, he's literally just sitting there, like hoping the ref stands him back up. So, I mean, if kids can get this fight to the ground, I mean, Dennis is in a ton of trouble. And I don't really see it getting back up to the feet. So, he's got one shot to knock him out. He is a much bigger fighter. Sometimes we see smaller guys struggle to get bigger opponents to the mat. So there's always a chance that, we see improved takedown defense out of Dennis. We see kids struggle a little bit. I mean, you just got to land one, right? The guy could be rusty. He's coming off an 18-month layoff. Like, you never know. Maybe he won't immediately get it to the ground. Like, it's such a high variance spot when you're entirely reliant on one outcome happening. Like, Kiz hasn't landed a finish beyond the first round since his pro debut. So we're basically relying on him getting a round 1 finish, getting Dennis down. I mean, it's a lot of things to rely on for a guy that's fought 50 seconds in the last 4 years fighting a much larger opponent. So, I mean, I get it. Like, stylistically, it's a great matchup for him, but there are lots of reasons to be to think that it could go wrong, you know? So the idea that he's a negative 1,000 favorite kind of blows my mind that people just kept betting that. Like the guys that bet it when it was like negative 900, like what are you doing there? Like what's going on?
I
Um,
mean, that's a ton of red flags for any fighter, let alone one of the biggest favorites you'll ever see on a UFC card. And I imagine a lot of that action is coming from Tululin's fight history, where he's fought a similar fighter, and that fighter probably scored roughly 275 DraftKings points against him with as many takedowns as control time as he had. But again, and if you're telling me all it takes is one shot at what's he going to be 5%, 7% owned in GPPs, I'll take that shot if you're making a bunch of lineups. And what do you think the possibility of, let's say this goes longer than 60 seconds, but we get like a 95 or 97 point quick submission win from Kizriev?
yeah, I mean that's also totally possible, right? Like, you know, we get a minute and a half fight where, you know, we see them stare at each other for 60 seconds, gets a takedown, immediately subs him, which is what he does. You know, this
Right.
guy just immediately subs people when he gets them to the ground. Or beats them up with ground and pound and lands 300 ground strikes. One of the two, you know, it goes one of those two directions
Either
generally with
90
him.
or
But he's
150 points. That's all. It's somewhere in that range.
right, right. It's such a wide range for him. But no, there are totally ways he fails. He's going to be, you know, he might be the most popular fighter on the slate. I think he's projected right around the same as Blaydes, you know, right around 50%. It is pretty crazy. It's the ultimate leverage spot, but he's also like the ultimate high ceiling play. So I mean, he doesn't have the floor that guarantees him a spot in the winning lineup just because he gets a finish. Like you said, he could get a quick sub on the mat. He gets one takedown. I mean, what happens if he doesn't even get a takedown? You know, what if like Dennis slips and then he just hops on his back and subs him immediately, you know?
Right.
Like we see that happen occasionally. Like you never know. Like he might not get if he doesn't get a takedown or a knockdown at his price, I mean, he's almost guaranteed not to be in the optimal lineup even if he gets a first round finish. So like he has to do more than just sub him beyond 60 seconds. So
For
I
sure.
mean, yeah, it's pretty crazy. And like you said, I mean, coming back, we have Dennis who's going to be like single digit ownership. I mean, the guy's last 8 wins have come by KO. Like they're generally coming in round one. I mean, who knows? He's significantly bigger. I mean, you're saying this guy can't land a knockout just because he took this fight on short notice. I mean, he took it on 6 days' notice, which we should probably say. Like Dennis took this on super short notice. Obviously,
It's
that's a
adding
red,
up. If you really
red,
want to play a
red
5% fighter, it's adding up.
red flag on his part. He also hasn't fought in a year, I believe. Let me just double. Yeah, it's been just over a year. It was March 2021 last time he fought. So neither one of these guys has been very active. But I mean, it's entirely possible that he just lands a knockout, completely breaks the slate, flips it upside down. Is it likely? No. Is it more than 7% likely? Yes.
For sure.
According to the odds, it's 13% likely.
There you go. So
But I think
that just says like be careful with your if you're using proper bankroll management, it's certainly fine to play Tululin in GPPs. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely, absolutely.
all right, so if we're not talking about the main event, if we're not talking about these newcomers, Jay, give me one or two other fights that you think whoever wins will likely score well for DFS.
So this is a weird slate in the sense that normally I have like too many fights I'm looking to target.
As
But
as
on
the
this
Daily Plug
slate,
editor, I can attest to that.
I didn't put any fights to target on the plug this week, and there was a reason for that. There's a lot of red flags on a lot of these people. There's not like so many of the fights normally are like, whoever wins is definitely going to score well. On this slate, not so much. Like so many of the fights, you can look at least one of the fighters and be like, yeah, I don't know. I can see a lot of ways they fail. So like fights like the Carol Hosa Sarah McMahon fight, like I could see Hosa, getting a submission and failing. I could see her winning a decision and failing. There's a lot of ways she fails if she wins. Otherwise, that might be a fight to target. And then you have fights like the Matt Brown, Brian Barberino fight. Like, good chance it ends early. Both guys are completely washed up. Kind of hard to get behind that fight in general and just be like, yeah, you definitely want a piece of this when you have two guys that probably shouldn't really even be in the UFC anymore. So I mean, there's some fights that are kind of gross that I think there's a good chance that they produce a high score, but I'm less excited about targeting specific fights and more excited about targeting specific fighters on this slate.
Which is a great teaser. If you want to check out Jake's work, MMADFS.com, read his The Sheet, which highlights every fight on the card, betting DFS implications, or the Daily Plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Jake's top plays for the slate, lineup construction tips, and his best bets. Speaking of best bets, let's close out the show with our stream parlay of the week. We talked about Souza at the top of the show with a little bit of a line flip in his favor, making him a preferred DraftKings low-risk play. Not a great high-risk play by any means. But Jake, his decision line, I think, is way too wide considering his history, the opponent, his second time fighting in the UFC, and his money line. I think it should be a little bit closer. So Souza decision plus 175 is what I'm going to go with my leg.
Yeah, I agree, man. That's a good bet. I think that's left over from when he was a dog and the books just didn't update it. I know some of the books changed it, and I think that line is specifically still at MGM and they did not update it. So those are the great prop lines to jump on. You know, when you see a line flip, but the props don't change. I mean, that's totally a great line. And talking about one of our favorite, fights that we just talked about, I like also on MGM the kid's Dennis under 1.5 rounds is negative 185. I know I looked around and those were the best odds I could find. I know other places didn't have it as wide, but specifically at MGM, both those lines, they feel a little stale. I think they should be worse. So, I mean, get them while you can. And if we do both of those, that should be plus 324. So, just kind of a grinder parlay, just kind of build your bankroll up.
We'll take those. And if you're in a legal sports betting state and you're not signed up with MGM, BetMGM, check out OccupyFantasy.com, click the betting link, get a deposit bonus when you use our link to sign up through BetMGM. Bet on this parlay. Yell at us on Twitter if it doesn't hit, or tag us on Twitter if it does hit. So, again, OccupyFantasy.com, click the betting link to get those deposit promos if you're in a legal sports betting state. So, that'll do it for this show. We appreciate you listening. Again, we're in the Discord through lock and watching the fights tomorrow. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. Click the join button below this video. Follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Read his work at MMADFS.com. The Sheet. Check out his Patreon, his premium content, and his best bets there. And at OccupyFantasy.com, we have our Occupy model, ranks every fighter, FanDuel, and DraftKings. The Daily Plug, written by Jake, top plays, lineup strategies, and also some best bets. And our lineup builder helps you build up to 150 UFC DFS lineups using our optimal lineup criteria. So that'll do it for the show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. For Jake, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening, and good luck this weekend.